Welcome to Spoken Reviews. Tell me about the Spoken Reviews. Today, guys, we're going to do the first MPG test now that we have the 37-inch Toyos on the truck. So we'll be headed to Houston today, and we're going to just go ahead and catalog this, and we'll also compare the computer MPG versus the MPG manually calculated. So please enjoy. All right, guys, and for this trip to Houston, we just filled up at the gas station here at the QT in Fort Worth. So we're going to go ahead and reset this trip, and then we'll just see how we go. I'm going to guess it's actually really windy today, so I'm going to guess we're probably going to average somewhere around 13, and normally we would average 18. But I'll do some periodic check-ins, and I'll give you a summary once we're done. Alright, guys, as you can see, we just hit the first 50 miles of the trip. I did reset it at the gas station like we saw before. Right now it's saying on this trip it's 17.1 miles per gallon, but then when I go to the instant it says 14.5. I do expect the computer to be a little bit off just because these are 37s, and I think they're 37s, but they measure about 36.6 inches versus the computer stock is set for the standards, and I believe this truck comes with about 32s standard, and then before I had 33s on it. So there is going to be a delta between just the computer computing, just because the bigger tire covers more distance in one revolution of spinning versus the standard tire. So I do have to get that computer reset. But I mean, so far it's going really good. My RPMs are pretty much cruising about 2,000, sometimes a little bit more, 2,000, unless I have to speed up. So far I am, impressed with that. The wheels and the tires together add about 550 pounds on the vehicle. So yeah, it's definitely more weight, which causes the drop in fuel economy. But honestly, I'm really impressed. You can see I've been averaging 65, and that's including the little bit of traffic that we had whenever we left Fort Worth, and we're still just on 35 going south. So we'll check in a little bit. I do expect the fuel economy to go up because there's a stretch once you get to Waco, between Waco and outside of Houston, that the speed limit slows down, and that's typically where my MPG kind of goes back up because I'm forced to go slower. I will note that the speedometer, it's about 5 to 7 miles off compared to what Google Maps is saying the speed is, which is what I expected it. And once I do get the computer reset, that will fix itself. As far as the smoothness on the road, when the road is smooth, it's smooth, but whenever I do hit bumps, it does seem bumpier than normal on bad roads, which is again what to expect. These are the F type, not the E type, so they're the heavier 12-ply tires, so they're meant for the heavier loads, but because of that, they're also going to be a little more stiffer than the regular ones. But again, yeah, 53 miles, 17 miles a gallon to this computer, and then on this one it's saying 14.7 on the instant. When I do get to Houston, I will do a manual calculation. I'll fill up and see how many gallons it is, and then we'll do the math to see what the manual is. But historically, this vehicle has been pretty accurate whenever I do the manual calculations versus what the computer says. Alright, guys, just doing a check-in. Right now we're 100 miles down, about 150 to go to get to Houston. So doing really good. The trip is saying 16.8. Did hit some traffic in Waco, so we did slow down. You have to note that the average speed, since the speedometer is off 5 miles per hour because of the larger tires, that it says 59 average speed, but I've really been going 66. And then looking at the instance average, it's saying 15.1. So yeah, still doing really good. Trip's pretty smooth. The speed limit goes up and down on this stretch of Highway 6. So basically on this drive I'm going I-35 south to Highway 6 to 290 outside of Houston. But I'll check in again at 150 miles. Alright, guys, just doing a check-in at 150 miles. Still riding really good. Did have to stop for a bathroom break. But the Trip A is showing 16.4 miles a gallon, which is really good, and then the instant is showing 15.2, so getting a little closer, but again, I'm not sure if it'd be better or worse since the speedometer is off. I need to kind of figure that one out. But kind of gauging from the gas gauge, it's pretty much right on target where we should be. With 100 miles left, it's pretty much where we normally are. I've been doing this drive in this truck for almost 6 years, and it typically takes just a little bit over half a tank to get there, and it looks like we're going to be there. So my initial impressions before actually measuring it is that the fuel economy is a little worse, but not too far off. Alright guys, at the 200 mile mark, about 50 miles or so from the outside of Houston. Right now the trip A is saying 15.8. Again, we're going to have to manually calculate this, but I do want to see what the computer says versus whenever we go to the pump and we do the math, what it says. And then the instant now is saying 15. So what we've seen over the course of the last 200 miles is that the trip and the instant are getting closer and closer. From what I thought, the way the instant was calculated was the last like 50 miles or so. I think, no, it's the last 100 miles. And maybe that kind of explains that sorry, that's the sun. That I wasn't doing as good because I was more in the city in the beginning. That's why my instant was significantly lower than the trip one. But as we've gone further in the trip, those are getting closer and closer. So we'll do one more check-in at the very end, and we'll just do a summary once we get there, and we'll be right at about 250 miles. But so far so good road trip. The interstates are smoother than some of the highways here. And that's just kind of the way that the roads are in Texas. Alright guys, just got to Houston. Pulled up, about to fill up in gas to do the manual calculation, but what we're going to do first is we're going to compare what the computer says. Very interesting. So the computer right now says that we only drove 238 miles, but in reality we drove 264 miles, which is very interesting. Also, the computer is saying on the trip A that we got 16 miles a gallon, versus if you look at the instant, we got 15.5. So like we stopped every 50 miles and we did the check-in. So I'm curious to see how close it's going to be to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill up, and we're going to take the 264 miles that we drove, divided by the amount of gallons of gas that it takes, and then we'll figure out the miles per gallon, and we'll compare it, and we'll do a conclusion on it. Alright guys, I'm filling up. I'm curious to see what the damages are going to be. But overall, just kind of thoughts, kind of summarizing that 264 mile trip. Pretty smooth. Like I said earlier, the interstates in Texas are pretty good, but the highways, like we were on Highway 6, a little bumpier, but they're fixing up some of the spots, but there are some issues with that. But alright guys, just finished filling up, and what we can see, we're at 15.681 gallons. Alright, so let's go over here to the calculator. So 264 miles divided by 15.681. Oh wow, so that's actually saying we got 16.83 miles per gallon, which is way better than the computer. I thought it was going to be worse. So yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. So yeah, so let's take a look at that one more time. So the manual calculation is saying 16.83, but on the computer we got 15.5 on the instant, and the instant's going to be the last 100 miles, and then on the trip A it's saying 16. So yeah, I mean, yeah, 16. Yeah, it's pretty close. Pretty impressed. And yeah, guys, there you go. I mean, that's what you're going to look for getting. Again, 37-inch tires, 22-inch rims, lifted 6.5 inches with a max track lift, and still doing pretty good. This V6 3.6 cylinder, pretty impressive that it can still get that fuel economy with that, even with just the weight of everything, still getting, 16.8 miles per gallon on a 250 mile trip. And that's manually calculated versus the computer put it at, 16? So yeah, no, really impressed with that. Really enjoying the 37s. Glad we didn't go for 35s. I was really close to getting the 35s, but we went with the 37s instead. And yeah, I mean, it's just that look. It's real meaty. There was barely any trimming. I love the 22s. Everything is solid. Again, these are 37 by 12.5 tires. And yeah, awesome. Well, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this is helpful for anybody out there who was looking to put bigger tires on it, or someone who wanted to know what the fuel economy would be once you put the bigger tires on. Yeah, really impressed, because normally I'm getting 18.5, and we're what, 16.8, 16.5-ish miles per gallon. So I mean, 500 pounds of tire and wheel only took down the MPG 2 miles per gallon. Not bad at all. All right, guys, thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. If you like the video, hit the like button. If you want to see more videos like this on the Ram, sub to the channel, guys. Thanks a lot.